Please, Daddy. I don't want to marry him.
You will do as you are told.
No. Please, I beg.
Enough! You will obey.
Grace fell on her knees as if the strength in her legs had suddenly left her. Her voice cracked, tears ran down her face fast, and her fingers pressed into the red ground like she could hold on to something and stop her life from changing. But her father didn't look moved, not even a little. Many years ago, in a small village called Umueze, there lived a girl called Grace. She was only 19, but if you looked into her eyes well, you would think she had lived many hard lives inside one body. Pain had a way of making people look older than their age, and Grace knew pain too well. Her mother had died 5 years before, and since then peace packed its things and left her life. Her father, Mr. Peter, was no longer the calm man people used to know. He drank too much, shouted too much, and behaved like kindness had offended him personally. Then he married another woman called Mrs. Susan, and from that day, Grace's life even became harder. Grace did almost all the job in that house. Before the morning light even showed itself properly, Grace would already be awake. She would light the fire, make food, wash plates, clean the yard, carry water, go looking for firewood, and still join in the work outside. By the time evening comes, her back would ache, her feet would ache, and many nights her stomach would sleep emptier than it should. People in Umueze saw what she was going through. They really did. But pity is one thing, and courage is another thing entirely. Most people simply looked at Grace, shook their heads, and kept quiet. Nobody wanted trouble with Mr. Peter. The man's anger was like dry firewood near flame. It did not need much before it started burning. Then Henry came. Henry was a young man from the city. His clothes were not fine, and his shoes had seen better days. But there was something steady about him. He had sharp eyes, the kind of eyes that noticed more than they said. For 3 months, he had worked on Mr. Peter's farm, cutting bush, planting cassava, carrying loads, and staying under the hot sun till his body felt like it was made of dust. But after all that job, Mr. Peter still refused to pay him. Every time Harry asked, the answer changed, but the result remained the same. Come next week. Tomorrow I will settle you. Let me sell something. That money kept moving forward like a promise that had no legs, but somehow still managed to escape. One hot afternoon, Harry came to the house looking tired enough to lie on the ground and sleep there. Sir, please, he said, trying to remain respectful. I need my money today. Mr. Peter scratched his head as if the question was too difficult. Then his eyes landed on Grace, who was sweeping the yard slowly with the tired face of someone who had long stopped expecting life to be fair. A bad smile spread across his face. You want your money? He asked. Yes, sir, Henry said. I worked for 3 months. Please pay me. Mr. Peter laughed. Not the kind of laugh that makes other people laugh too. The kind that makes the air feel wrong. Well, he said, pointing at Grace. Take that girl instead. Henry looked at him properly. Take who? My daughter, Mr. Peter said carelessly. Take her to the city. That will be your pay. For 1 second, the whole place felt still. Then Grace's broom slipped from her hand. Daddy, please, I don't want to marry him, she cried. Shut up, Mr. Peter barked. You should be happy someone even wants you. Mrs. Susan folded her arms and smiled like this was good news. Let her go. At least there will be less one person to feed. Grace looked from one face to the other as if maybe somewhere in that yard there was still one human heart left. but there was none. She knelt there and begged. She cried until her voice sounded too tired, but nobody answered her with mercy. Henry looked at her quietly. She was wounded, yes. Anybody could see that. But she was still beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with powder or fine clothes. There was something soft and good in her that suffering had not managed to kill. He looked at her again and said under his breath, "She is beautiful." Mr. Peter frowned. "What did you say?" Henry lifted his head. "I said I would take her." And just like that, Grace's life turned a corner she had not seen coming. She packed her few things into a black nylon bag. Nobody hugged her. Nobody prayed for her. Nobody said, "Go well." It was as if she was not leaving a home, but being removed from a boarding list. Only her little half-brother, Sam, stood behind the house with tears in his eyes, waving at her with the helpless sadness children carry when they know something bad is happening but cannot stop it. And Grace followed Henry out of Umeze. The journey to the city was long enough to give her too much time to think. She sat by the window in the bus and watched how trees, roads, and towns passed by like pages in a life she did not belong to. Her bag stayed close to her body. Every now and then she held it tighter, like if she loosened her grip she might disappear too. She did not know what to feel. She had left the only place she knew. It's true that place had given her more pain than comfort, but it was still the place where her life had happened. Now she was going somewhere new with a man she hardly knew. Inside her heart she prayed quietly, "Lord, please let this man not be wicked like my father. Please give me rest. I am tired." Henry did not talk much on the journey. He mostly kept looking ahead, thinking his own thoughts, but now and then he glanced at Grace and sighed. She looked too young for all the sorrow sitting on her face, too small for the load life had placed on her shoulders. By the time they reached the city, Grace was already holding her breath. Everything looked new. Tall buildings stood proudly. Cars moved with bright lights. People walked quickly like they all had somewhere urgent to be. Even the noise in the air sounded different from village noise. City noise did not rest, it just kept happening. Grace held her bag close and tried not to look too lost. They entered a tricycle and passed through roads she could never have described if somebody asked her later. At some point, the tricycle stopped at a quiet street. Henry paid the driver and led her down a short path lined with flowers. Then they stopped in front of a large black gate. Henry knocked. A few seconds later, the gate opened. Grace almost forgot to breathe. Inside was a very big and beautiful compound. It looked like someone washes the ground every 5 minutes. The main house was painted white and stood proudly like a place rich people in films used to live. Flowers were arranged neatly beside the walkway, and somewhere in one corner water moved gently into a small fountain. Henry led her past the main building to a smaller place behind it. It was not big, but it was neat. It was a small one-bedroom apartment. "This is where I live," Henry said. Grace looked round slowly. "I got a security job here a few days ago. The owner of the house is kind, so she allowed me to stay here for free." Grace turned to him. "Really?" Henry nodded, and then continued. "She lives in the main house with her only son. She said I can stay here as long as I do my job properly." Grace looked round again. To another person, it might have looked small. To her, it looked like bees had rented the room. The roof was fine. No leaking roof and no sleeping on kitchen mats. No shouting hanging in the air again. For the first time in a long while, a weak smile touched her face. If this is where God has brought me, she said softly, then let me accept it. Henry studied her face. Are you okay with it? She nodded slowly. Yes, I feel calm here. I have not felt calm in a very long time. The next day, Grace woke up to the smell of good food. The kind of smell that enters the nose gently and reminds the body that life can be kind sometimes. She opened her eyes slowly. Morning light slipped through the window, soft and quiet. For a moment, she just lay there, looking around the room like someone making sure the peace was real. There was no shouting, no insult, no fear, no bad dream, no waking in the middle of the night because someone was banging on the door, no hunger twisting her stomach. She walked into the kitchen and found Henry cooking. Good morning, she said. Henry turned and smiled. Good morning. I made breakfast. I hope you slept well. She smiled back, small but real. I slept like someone who finally rested. Henry laughed. That is good. After they ate, he said, get dressed. I want you to meet somebody. Who? Grace asked. You will see. Then Grace went back inside the room. She wore one of the simple dresses Henry had bought for her. She arranged her hair and came out with her heart beating a little faster than normal. They walked to the main house. When they got there, the black front door opened and a graceful woman in her late 50s stood there. She had kind eyes, a calm face, and the kind of gentle presence that made people lower their shoulders without knowing why. Good morning, ma, Henry said. Good morning, Henry. Then her eyes moved to Grace. And who is this beautiful young woman? This is Grace, Henry said. The woman's face brightened. So this is the wife you told me about. She is lovely. Please come in, my dear. Grace followed carefully into the house. Inside the sitting room, everything was clean, beautiful, and arranged with the quiet confidence of money that did not need to announce itself loudly. The woman held Grace's hand. You are welcome. My name is Mrs. Wilson. I like you already. You have a sweet spirit. Grace smiled shyly. Thank you, ma. Mrs. Wilson nodded warmly. Feel at home. This place has enough space for peace. If you need anything, let me know. After some talking, Grace and Henry returned to the boys' quarter. That evening, after she cleaned the little kitchen and put the room in order, Grace sat on the edge of the bed thinking. Henry was on the floor fixing a loose wardrobe handle. Henry, she called softly. Henry looked up. Can I tell you something? Of course. Grace lowered her eyes and started playing with her fingers. When my father told me to follow you that day, I felt useless. I felt like something that could be handed over and nobody would care. Henry stood up slowly. I thought maybe you would even be worse than my father. I thought once we got here, you would start shouting, beating me or using me like a slave. Her voice began to shake. But you didn't. You gave me rest. You gave me peace. You treated me like I mattered. You even cooked for me. She wiped her cheek quickly. I just want to say thank you. I didn't regret coming here anymore. Maybe what happened that day. Maybe the way God chose to move me from one life to another. Henry came and sat beside her. I would never hurt you, Grace. That is not the kind of man I want to be. He paused. Can I tell you something? Grace looked at him. I liked you from the first day I saw you on that farm. Grace blinked. Harry smiled a little. I wanted to speak to your father, but I was afraid. I thought he would insult me, chase me away, or ask me what I had to offer. He let out a breath. So that day, when he said I should take you instead of money, I was shocked, but inside me, I was also glad. It felt like a door had opened in a strange way. Grace looked down. "I do not love you yet," she said honestly. And Henry quickly replied, "I am not forcing you." She nodded. "But I like how you treat me. You make me feel seen. You make me feel like I am not a mistake." Henry smiled warmly. "That is because I value you a lot. You have only been hidden where nobody knew your value." Grace laughed softly through her tears. And in that quiet room, something began to grow between them. A month later, there was a very big change in the life of Grace. One sunny afternoon, while Grace was helping Mrs. Wilson bring groceries inside the main house, the older woman said, "Grace, come and sit with me for a moment." Grace wiped her hands and sat. Mrs. Wilson smiled. "Do you know Henry said something sweet about you?" Grace looked curious. "What did he say?" "He said you are a very good cook, and honestly, I agreed. I have been watching you. You are careful, hardworking, and respectful." Grace smiled shyly. "Thank you, ma." Mrs. Wilson continued, "My cook traveled abroad with her family. I need someone I can trust to take her place. I have thought about it, and I believe you are the right person." Grace's mouth opened. For a second, no sound came out. Then tears rushed into her eyes. "Ma, thank you so much. God bless you. I don't even know what to say." Mrs. Wilson patted her hand. "You deserve it." Grace was still smiling in shock when she said, "Ma, can I tell you something?" "Go ahead, my child." "I want to go back to school," Grace said. "I want to enter university one day. I have been looking for a way to earn money. Not for fashion or anything like that. I just want to learn." Mrs. Wilson's face lit up immediately. "You want to continue school?" "Yes, ma. I stopped after secondary school because of family problems. But I love reading, I love learning, and I really want to go back to school." Mrs. Wilson hugged her. "My dear, that is a beautiful dream. I am proud of you." Grace ran back to the boys' quarter almost too excited to walk properly. "Harry," she shouted before she even reached the door. Harry came out quickly. "What happened?" Grace was smiling so hard, her face almost looked new. "Mrs. Wilson wants me to become her cook." Harry's eyes widened. "What?" "She says she will pay me every month. I also told her I want to go to university, and she was so happy." Harry pulled her into a hug. "That is my wife." Grace laughed. "No, I mean it," he said. "Look at how far you have come. From pain to peace, from tears to something that actually looks like joy." Grace smiled and shook her head. "It still feels like a dream." Harry smiled back, then let the dream continue. That night, after dinner, they lay on the bed side by side, staring up at the ceiling. After a while, Grace turned to him. "Henry." "Yes." "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." She took a breath. "Why haven't you touched me since I came here?" Henry turned and looked at her properly, surprised but calm. Grace looked a little shy, but she kept going. "I mean, we are married. Another man might have forced himself on me from the first night." Henry sat up and leaned against the wall. "You are right," he said. "Many men would have done that, but I am not many men." He looked at her gently. "I did not bring you here to use you, Grace. I brought you here to care for you." He paused. "You have been through enough already. I can see it in your eyes, even when you are smiling. So I do not want to become another wound in your life." Grace's eyes began to fill. "I want you to be ready," he said. "I want the day it happens to be because your heart is calm and you want it too. Not because you are afraid, and not because you think marriage means you must suffer quietly." He held her hand. "You deserve safety, Grace, and you deserve gentleness." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You really mean that?" she said. Harry nodded. "Yes, I do. I want what we have to stand on love, not on fear. Grace smiled through tears that would not stop coming. Thank you, she whispered. You have changed the way I see men. I used to think they are all like my father. Harry leaned over and kissed her forehead. Sleep, he said softly. You are safe here. And for the first time in her life, those words felt true. Not just safe with a husband, but safe with a friend. 2 days after Grace started working in the men's house kitchen, something happened that disturbed the little peace she had found. She was making Mrs. Wilson's favorite vegetable soup when the kitchen door opened. Grace turned and saw a tall, handsome young man standing there watching her. It was Daniel, Mrs. Wilson's only son. For a second, he just stared. Then he smiled. You are Grace, he said. My mother told me about you, but she didn't prepare me properly. You are very beautiful. Grace stood there still. Daniel stepped closer. She said you were gentle and hardworking too. But honestly, the beauty entered the room first. Grace lowered her eyes quickly. Good afternoon, sir. Daniel laughed. Sir? No, don't do that. Please call me Daniel. Grace shook her head. No, sir, it is not proper. He smiled. You are even more interesting than I expected. Grace returned her attention to the pot. After a while, he left. That evening, when Grace returned to the boys' quarter, Henry was outside, sitting on a wooden bench. Welcome, my queen, he said playfully. How was work? Grace sat beside him, but her face looked troubled. Something happened today, she said. Henry turned at once. What happened? Are you okay? Yes, but Daniel came into the kitchen. Henry nodded. Okay? He said things I did not like. Grace said. He called me beautiful. He told me to stop calling him sir. The way he looked at me made me uncomfortable. Henry frowned a little, then gave a small smile. Ah, Daniel likes to talk, oh, he said. That is how he jokes. Grace did not smile. Henry, I do not like that. Henry touched her hand. Okay, I hear you. But don't worry too much. If he crosses the line, just tell me, okay? Grace nodded, but inside her, something still felt wrong. A few days later, she understood why. She was in the kitchen again when Daniel appeared, leaning against the doorway like a man who had just come with a decision already made. You know, he said, I have been thinking about you. Grace turned slowly. Good afternoon, sir. Daniel ignored the greeting. I will go straight to the point, he said. I like you, Grace. Daniel stepped closer. I mean it. Grace, you are beautiful, smart and humble. Please just accept to be my girl. He kept going. I can change your life. I can send you back to school, not just school here. I can send you to abroad if you want. I can buy you clothes, phone, everything. Trust me, you will never struggle again. Grace stood still. Then Daniel said the part that made her stomach turn. You are wasting your time with that poor security man. What can he really do for you? If I want, I can ask my mother to sack him today, or I can just pay him off. Just say yes. Grace took a small step back. With respect, sir, she said, her voice calm but firm. I am not interested. Please, I need to focus on my marriage, my work and my dream. For your information, I am not leaving my husband. Then Daniel laughed. Is that what you call dancing with Daniel? You should be ashamed. You deserve better than a broke security guard. Grace lifted her chin. I am proud of my husband, she said. He treats me with care and respect, and that alone is enough for me. Daniel coughed. You are dreaming. Grace looked straight at him. Then let me dream with a man who loves me. It is better than waking up beside someone who only wants to buy me. Daniel's face changed. You will regret this. Grace answered at once. No, I will not. That evening, she told Henry everything. Henry's face tightened. He said that to you? Grace nodded. I told him no. I told him I believe in you. Henry looked deeply moved. He pulled her close and held her for a long moment. Thank you, he said quietly. Grace rested her head on him. You stood by me first, and I promise to always stand by you too. The next morning, Grace woke up and she was very tired. Not body tired, heart tired. She was done pretending everything was fine. So she went straight to the main house and asked to see Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson welcomed her in. Grace, what is wrong? Grace took a breath. Ma, it is about Daniel. Mrs. Wilson listened as Grace explained everything. The compliment, the promises, the pressure, the insult against Henry. When Grace finished, she looked at the older woman with hope. Surely now somebody would do the right thing. But after a long silence, Mrs. Wilson said, Grace, you are a beautiful girl. Maybe Daniel simply sees your future. Maybe you should think about what he is saying. Grace stared at her. Mrs. Wilson continued, I am not saying you should be wicked, but we can make life easier for you. Education, comfort, and good living. Even Henry can benefit. We can settle him. Grace stood up slowly. Her hand was shaking, but her voice did not. With respect, ma, I did not come here to sell myself. Mrs. Wilson said nothing. When the whole world turned its back on me, Henry stood by me. When my own father treated me like nothing, Henry gave me dignity. I would never betray him. Tears stood in Grace's eyes, but she refused to let them weaken her words. If this is how things are going to be, then I would rather leave this job. I will not stay where my marriage is treated like a joke. And with that, she turned and walked out. By the time she got back to the boys' quarter, her chest was rising and falling with anger. When she entered their room, she saw bundles of money that could change their life entirely. Grace turned sharply. Henry, what is this? Henry stood up slowly. Come and sit down. She sat, though her eyes stayed on the money. I have been saving for a long time, though I wanted to use it to start a business. Grace looked at him. But after what happened today, after seeing the way you stood by me, I decided something. I want you to use this money for school. Grace blinked. What? Henry nodded. It is your dream. Go to university. I'll be fine. Grace looked at the money again, then back at him. No, she said. Henry frowned. Grace, I mean it. Grace stood up with tears already filling her eyes. This money is not just money. It is your dream. You saved it with hard work. You wanted to build something for yourself. I cannot take that from you. But I want to give it to you. Grace shook her head. Then let us use it together. Let us leave this place. Let us rent a small room somewhere else and start a business. You run it, I will help. When things begin to stand well, I will go to school later. Henry looked at her like she had just said something holy. You want us to leave? Yes, Grace said. I do not want to stay where people look down on us. Even if our peace is small, let it be ours. Henry walked to her and took both her hands. Grace, he said softly, you are more than what I prayed for. She smiled through her tears. You are the man I choose. He pulled her into his arms. Then they kissed. Not out of pressure, and not because somebody said husband and wife must perform, but because trust had grown enough to touch love. That night, they lay quietly in each other's arms while moonlight slipped through the window. The next day, Henry was not at home. Grace cleaned the room and tried not to think too much, but her mind kept moving. Then there was a knock at the door. She opened it and nearly froze. Mrs. Wilson and Daniel stood outside. They had come to apologize. Mrs. Wilson spoke gently. Daniel looked serious. They both admitted they were wrong. Grace listened carefully, still guided, but eventually her face softened. "I forgive you," she said. Mrs. Wilson smiled. "That is why you are special." Then she added something strange. "You are my son's wife." Grace frowned. "Your son?" Then Mrs. Wilson smiled in a way that explained nothing. "You will understand soon." Later that evening, Henry came back. He looked so tired, but there was something in his face that told Grace a conversation was coming whether she liked it or not. "My love," he said, "there is something I need to tell you." Grace folded her arms. "Go on." Henry took her hands. "I lied to you." Grace's eyes narrowed. "About what?" Henry let out a long breath. "Daniel is not just the woman's son. He is my younger brother. And Mrs. Wilson is my mother." Grace's mouth opened. "What?" Henry nodded. "I'm sorry." He explained everything. His family, his wealth, the woman from the past who had pretended to love him but only cared about his money, and the reason he hid who he really was. "I needed to know if someone could love me without seeing my background first." Grace sat there. After a while she spoke. "You went too far." Harry nodded immediately. "I know." Silence sat between them. Then Grace shook her head and said, "I forgive you, but you owe me." Henry blinked. "Owe you what?" Grace folded her arms again. "A car and a mansion." "Just consider it done," Henry said. "I love you," she whispered, "and I love you more. Dr. Grace to be." Soon the news spread. The poor security man was not poor. Henry was a millionaire. When Mr. Peter heard, he nearly choked on his drink. He called Grace at once in the soft, fake voice of a man who had suddenly remembered he was somebody's father. "My daughter, please forgive me." Grace listened quietly. Then he asked if her stepsister could come and stay with her in the city. Grace said no. Not a long no. Just the kind that closes a door properly. "I forgive you," she told him, "but I want peace. Please do not call me for nonsense." Then she ended the call. Years passed. Grace went to school. She studied hard. And one beautiful day she walked across a graduation stage wearing a white coat. She had become a medical doctor. Harry shouted louder than everybody in the crowd. "That is my wife!" After the ceremony, he held her tightly. "I am so proud of you." Grace smiled. "Thank you for believing in me." Then one peaceful afternoon, Harry drove her into a beautiful estate and stopped in front of a huge white mansion with golden gates. Grace turned to him. "Why are we here?" Harry smiled and brought out a set of keys. "This is your mansion, my queen." Grace screamed and hugged him. "I promised you a car and a mansion, so I'm keeping my word." Grace hugged him again, laughing and crying all at once. Then she pulled back and said, "I have news too." Harry raised a brow. "Good news?" She smiled. "I am 3 months pregnant." Harry froze for half a second, then shouted so loudly that even the air around them seemed to jump. "Grace!" She laughed. "Yes, we are going to have a baby." He lifted her and turned her around in pure joy before carefully setting her down again. Then he bent and kissed her stomach. "Daddy loves you already," he said softly. Grace stood there with tears in her eyes. From being rejected to being cherished. From being thrown away to being deeply loved. And in that moment, her name felt bigger than ever. Grace.